I don't necessarily think that sexual violence on campus is on the rise at the moment, but I definitely think it's fair to say that there are increased reports recently. And I think that could be attributed to a few different factors, including a change in culture, so people understand sexual violence differently, and when they know that an instance happens to them, they're much more likely to report it because they're aware of support, and there might be a little bit less stigma about disclosing nowadays. During my time as Women's Officer at Manchester University, I learnt that the issue of sexual violence is quite prevalent, in fact very prevalent. I received a lot of disclosures from individuals and groups of students, particularly women students, about experiencing sexual and domestic violence on campus. There's also a lack of support available, and that's specialist support, which is what is needed for victims of sexual and domestic violence. So I think that hand in hand causes a big difficulty because, as I said before, people are much more likely to come forwards now, but if they are coming forwards and there's not that specialist support, then they're in quite a bit of difficulty what to do. I think it's absolutely key that universities and student communities and students' unions work together on this issue. I think that the communication campaigns have to come from both parties together, so it doesn't look kind of paternal or patronising for university institutions to kind of be telling students how not to behave or what not to do. I think that it's really important for them to have those messages and make it clear what's acceptable and what isn't. But the fact that it comes from the student community as well is much more kind of peer-led, and it's much more likely to have an effect on culture because it's coming from within. I think the key challenge for universities around prevention education is resource and time, because if you take kind of a small university that can maybe deliver an intervention initiative, that can reach a small amount of students realistically. So I think it's the difficulty pairing that with the fact that, you know, a University of Manchester where I'm from has 40,000 students. So how do you reach all of those students at the same time and make sure the messaging is consistent and getting the message through to students? I think consistency is missing. I think that it's really important to have a consistent message going through to all students, so everyone has a similar understanding of the policies and procedures, but also what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and where to get support. So I think that the small pockets of work going on campuses are amazing, and maybe the more in-depth face-to-face longevity of intervention courses is really important, but I think that needs to be underpinned by a much more consistent, maybe online, maybe a far-reaching campaign or intervention. So that's why I think the EPIGEUM Consent Matters course is really important, because it's giving that online resource for universities to get out to all of their students. They can make it compulsory so everyone has to do it, and it's a prerequisite for them studying there, so it can really tackle the root causes of the problem, really educate students, and make a difference not just on campus but in society in general, because those students will then go on to do whatever profession they're going to do, and they'll take that learning and that education and that progression forwards. I think the main benefit for online training is consistency and making sure that you actually reach everyone. I think if you have a face-to-face workshop, that can be brilliant, but the people who turn up for that workshop may well be the people who are already engaged in the issues. Whereas if you have an online course that everyone has to take, you know that you're reaching everyone, and it's very, very easy to see who hasn't taken it and deal with that kind of individually, whereas it's a little bit more difficult to do that with face-to-face.